They weren't superheroes. They were two teenage comic book nerds who actually believed vampires were real, and then proved it. Tonight, we're going deep into the story of Edgar and Alan Frog, the legendary vampire hunters from the Lost Boys. From their mysterious origins in Santa Carla's boardwalk comic shop, to their tragic downfall in the sequels and comics, this is the dark and forgotten journey of the Frog Brothers, and what really happened after the credits roll. Because what started as a teenage fantasy ended in blood, betrayal, and loss. Long before vampires haunted the streets of Santa Carla, two brothers, Edgar and Alan Frog, spent their childhood tucked away inside their parents' tiny comic book shop on the boardwalk. But for them, comics weren't just stories. They were manuals for survival. While other kids were out skateboarding or chasing girls, the Frogs were reading every page of Vampires Everywhere and Destroy All Vampires, like sacred texts, memorizing every rule, every weakness, every way to kill the undead. Their parents? Barely around, always off traveling, chasing adventures that didn't include their kids. That left Edgar and Alan to fend for themselves and to run the shop. But their grandparents, they were different. They knew the truth about Santa Carla. They'd seen the town before it turned into a tourist trap, back when the old hotel still stood above the cliffs before it collapsed into the earth after the Great Earthquake. They were there the night David, Max, and the Lost Boys first began to feed, as the sunken hotel became a crypt for the damned. The brothers grew up on those whispered stories, tales of missing workers, strange shadows moving beneath the boardwalk, the smell of blood after the fog rolled in. Their parents laughed it off. "Oh, ghost stories," they said. But the Frogs listened, and they believed. By the time they were 13, they weren't kids anymore. They were soldiers, armed with wooden stakes, comic book knowledge, and a burning sense of duty to protect Santa Carla from the monsters no one else dared to see. That summer, the Emerson family moved into town. Sam Emerson, the younger brother, stumbled into the Frogs' comic store and laughed off their warnings about vampires. But the Frogs weren't joking. They handed Sam a comic and told him it could save your life. When Sam's brother Michael fell under the spell of David's vampire gang, Sam turned to the Frogs for help. And for the first time, the brothers had a real mission. Inside the vampire's lair, hanging from the cave ceiling like bats, the Frogs crept forward, trembling but ready. Edgar drove a stake straight into one vampire's heart. It screamed, and all hell broke loose. The gang woke up. The Frogs barely escaped with their lives. That night, the battle for the Emerson house began. Wooden stakes, holy water, garlic baths, and a dog named Nanook that saved the day. By sunrise, the vampires were dead. The leader, Max, was impaled through the heart. And the Frogs stood victorious, young, cocky, and fearless. They believed they'd won the battle, but really, it was just the beginning of a much bigger war. The Frogs didn't stop hunting. They carried their crusade across America, from the neon-lit boardwalks of California to the rain-soaked rooftops of Washington, D.C. But one mission changed everything. On a cold night, Alan Frog was captured and forced to drink vampire blood from one of the Widow Johnson Blood Bordello's vampires. He didn't just fall. He was dragged into darkness. he became a half-vampire, caught between two worlds, forced to feed on animal blood just to survive. And the brothers, they were torn apart. Edgar driving forward, Alan disappearing into the shadows. Their bond, the only family they'd ever truly had, shattered. Fast forward 20 years after Santa Carla. Edgar Frog lives alone in a trailer beside the sea in Luna Bay. Crosses nailed to the walls, garlic hanging from windows, stakes stacked like museums of memory. He's reduced to paranoia and poverty, shaping surfboards by day while hunting monsters by night. Then a young man named Chris Emerson moves in with his sister Nicole. Yes, that Emerson family again. Nicole falls for Shane Powers, charming surfer guy under the neon waves, who of course turns out to be a vampire. She drinks his blood, becomes one of them. When Edgar finds her, he doesn't hesitate. He lifts his surfboard like a club, ready to end this. But Chris intervenes, pleading for a chance to save her. So together, they dive into the old mine tunnels. In the darkness, Edgar and Chris slaughter Shane's gang. Chris slices Shane's head off. Nicole is saved, but the cost is steep. Because right after that victory, Edgar is forced to face a nightmare far worse than any vampire. His old friend, Sam Emerson, has become one of them, turned by David himself, seeking revenge for the Lost Boys' slaughter. The perfect vengeance. And Edgar, he has no choice. He has to kill him. It destroys Edgar, takes away the last piece of his childhood. A triumph, maybe, a victory, hardly. Because when you hunt monsters long enough, you become haunted by them. A few years later, when we track down Edgar again, he's a broken man, living on scraps, haunted by the faces of the people he couldn't save. A woman named Gwen Lieber hires him to save her brother Peter, kidnapped by a vampire DJ named DJ X, who plans to spike his raves with vampire blood and turn the entire crowd into the undead. Edgar doesn't want the job. He's tired. He's broke. And his brother Alan, still cursed, but Edgar needs the money. And deep down, he can't stop fighting. He's the last of the Frog brothers. He builds a team. Gwen, a washed-up reality TV star named Lars, and his cameraman. But the mission goes to hell. Lars dies. Edgar's wounded. At the final rave, DJ X unleashes chaos. Hundreds of people drinking vampire blood under the blood moon. Just when Edgar's about to die, Alan returns. The brothers fight side by side one last time. They blow up DJ X using a resin grenade stolen from Area 51. But nothing goes as planned, because DJ X wasn't the real head vampire. Peter Lieber, the man they thought they were rescuing, was. And Gwen, she was helping him all along. Peter kills Gwen and tries to recruit Edgar as his personal vampire assassin. When Edgar refuses, Peter uses his power to make Alan attack his own brother. It's brother against brother, hunter versus half vampire. In a desperate move, Edgar splashes Peter with water and blesses it mid-air, turning it into holy water. Peter burns alive. Alan collapses, and when the smoke clears, he's human again. For the first time in years, the Frog brothers step into the sunlight together. Alan smiles and says, "Feels good to get a tan again." But deep down, Edgar knows the war will never really end. The Frogs were pulled into new battles, new vampires, new monsters, always returning to the same cursed boardwalk where it all began. But something had changed. They weren't kids anymore. They were relics of a war no one believed in. Their story became legend, a mix of campfire tales, cult nostalgia, and blood-soaked redemption. Edgar and Alan Frog started out as two nerdy teens reading vampire comics and ended up living inside one. Their legacy isn't just about killing vampires. It's about obsession, loyalty, and what it costs to keep fighting when everyone else has moved on. Because in the world of the Lost Boys, the monsters never really die. They just wait for nightfall. The Frog Brothers began as comic relief and ended as tragic heroes. They were the soul of the Lost Boys universe, proof that even the smallest heroes can fight back against the darkness. But in doing so, they lost everything. If you thought the Frog Brothers' story was dark, wait till you see what really happened to Sam Emerson. Watch the next video